Hello, hello, hello. March is here and there were a surprising amount of games releasing that I find interesting. A few will overlap with my Steam Next Fest video if you've seen that, but with that said, let's take a look at the best indie games releasing in March. First up is Seekers of Skyveil, a MOBA-like extraction game, a team-based PvPvE style of a game. Each team is made up of 3 heroes, each hero have unique abilities. There is matchmaking for solo and duo as well. As it is an extraction game, there is some risk involved while you gather materials and items and try to extract with them without dying. As you gain power, you will gain access to better maps with better loot. There are 3 map variations in the game at launch. I really like the look of this one. I think it could be a lot of fun. It will be free on launch. It does launch into early access and will stay in early access for about 6 to 12 months. Release is planned for 4th of March. Then we have Knights in Tight Spaces, a deck building strategy game with what looks like some roguelike features. You assemble your crew and cards and fight in tight spaces. The game's map feels very roguelike as you travel along a path with a few options on where to go. The battles themselves take place in all types of environments and looks like you can use the environment to your advantage as well. I love when game implements stuff like this. There are 300 cards in the game, there is gear for your characters and different classes, so lots of flexibility here. And you can certainly have some crazy synergies between the characters and the cards. And there are of course team up moves as well. The style of the game is amazing. I love what they've done here. From the colors to the paint drawn style of everything. It looks really cool. Release is planned for 4th of March as well. Next up is I Am Legion Stand Survivors. I covered this one in my Steam Next Fest video, but it is a roguelite survivor where you summon characters to attack for you. You can have 8 characters surrounding you, and if you get 2 of the same characters, you can combine them and upgrade it. This upgrading aspect gets expanded even more with different characters that can be combined for even better characters. The game also have a very simple crafting system for a bit of equipment and some more stats for your character, but it definitely looks like you can create some insane combination of characters. And the game has that addictive aspect to it. Release is planned for 7th of March. Then we have Beyond the Ice Palace 2, an action platforming Metroidvania where you play the cursed king that have just arisen. I was trying to find the first game on Steam to take a look at it, but it's not on there, and a quick Google later, I found out that the first game was released back in 1988 on the Commodore 64. That is crazy. Reading a bit more on the game's page on Steam, they mentioned this, but you know, I did some research. Anyhow, the main weapon looks a bit like Kratos from God of War, 2 knives on chains, and it seems like they are used for platforming as well. But I think the game looks pretty cool, a bunch of big bosses in it of course, upgrades, puzzles, hidden stuff, all that good stuff you want in a Metroidvania. Release is planned for 10th of March. Then we have Metal Bringer, an action-adventure roguelite where you play a humanoid android that can pilot mechs. The game seems to be very customizable, you can swap out parts and weapons. You of course unlock more as you play and progress. As you play, your mech will also deteriorate, so you will have to swap out parts enemies have dropped. Kind of a nice aspect. I really like the style of the game, very detailed pixelated graphics is so cool. I'm sure it's just a filter or something like that, but it's still a cool style. It might not be the most innovative game, but it looks solid. I like when roguelite games are highly customizable in how you can play them. Release is planned for 12th of March. Next up is Bionic Bay, a very interesting action-adventure game where you use a teleportation mechanic or a swap mechanic to change the place of you and an object. This is very interesting and it's used on the fly to avoid dying and solving puzzles. There seems to be more abilities in the game. The latest trailer shows off slowing down time. Nothing new in gaming, but always fun to mess around with. In the game you're playing a scientist trying to escape an ancient biomechanical world that is filled with dangers. It reminds me a lot of Playdead's games like Inside and Limbo, same dark vibe and interesting mechanics. Release is planned for 13th of March. Then we have Redemption of Liuyin, an action RPG in third person. I played the demo during the Steam Next Fest, and it felt a bit stiff around the edges when it comes to the movement and combat. It looks good in the trailer, so I encourage you to play the demo if you're interested in the game. I do think it's fun the little bit I played, and I think it's overall fine for a smaller developer. Hopefully with a bit more polish, I think it could be really nice. The combat has a good structure to it with combos, blocking and dodging, but overall I like that it has a good diversity in environments, and it has some interesting enemies as well, so hopefully it turns out great. I think it's at least worth keeping an eye on if you're looking for a third-person action RPG, and hopefully the story is interesting as well. Release is planned for 24th of March. Then we have Grit and Valor 1949, a real-time strategy roguelite set in an alternate World War II timeline. You are put in control of an elite mech squadron. You can of course customize your mechs, choose which one you want to bring with you. The game is played on these small maps where you attack objectives and defend against waves of enemies. And as I mentioned, outside of combat you have a base of operations where you upgrade and rebuild your squad. I think tactical gameplay on small maps is usually very enjoyable, and this one certainly looks interesting. Release is planned for 26th of March. Then we have INAYAH Life After Gods, an action platforming Metroidvania. I really like the style of this one. The environment looks amazing. The combat and movement looks nice as well. And you have these gauntlets that can transform into a blade, a flail and fists. And they of course come with different movesets, but they also have their own movement ability. The game overall comes with 20 bosses, which is good. Hopefully they are fun to face as well. Then you of course have enhancements you can find. There is a skill tree. And there seems to be a big emphasis on the story with multiple choices and all that good stuff. Release is planned for 27th of March. Next up is Wildkeepers Rising, a roguelite survivor where you gain allies in the form of guardian beasts. I played the demo for this one a while back. I'll link the video down below. But the overall structure is very much a standard roguelite survivor, but here you can free these guardians that will help you fight. These guardians have their own skills that can be triggered, and they are good at different things. It's kind of a neat aspect to the game, and obviously the main hook of the game. Then you have the standard hub with passive upgrades, but the game is mission based, so you have a map with all the different missions, and I would assume kind of a story that goes along with it. The game will launch into early access on the 31st of March, and will stay in early access for about a year. Could be worth keeping an eye on at least. Then I have a few games that are supposed to release Q1, but doesn't have a date yet. So they might release later, but I wanted to include them as they might release in March still. First up we have Duel Corp. This one looks so cool. A Souls-inspired RPG with 3D pixelated graphics. I don't know why, but the graphical choice is so interesting and kind of cozy. The game supposedly plays a bit like an MMO where you can meet and interact with other players. The game will support PvP and 2-player co-op. The game lets you create your own playstyle via weapons, armors and abilities and talents. And I really like the sound of that. I like that you have freedom in games like this. Hopefully you can test and respec easily. The world or worlds are going to be procedurally generated. I don't really know how the game will be structured, but the world is going to be interconnected, filled with secrets, unique items. I just hope it's not too ambitious and that they don't spread themselves too thin, but it does sound cool. Release is planned for Q1 this year. Then we have Fantastic Heaven, which kind of looks like a city builder / strategy game, but with a very chill vibe to it. You are trying to restore balance by saving endangered creatures. There must be a lot of them if you have a whole game about this. But the game is split into different areas, and you start by choosing where to build your base in one of these areas, your base of operations. After that, you build out your basic infrastructure. There is research you can do to unlock more buildings. Then it's time to explore and find creatures that need your help. You also have hostile factions to deal with. But the game is mainly focused around building up your camp or refuge to help and take care of these creatures and then release the creatures to restore balance. There is of course a lot more to the game, but I do think it looks interesting and it's kind of nice to see a more chill strategy game. Release of this one is planned for Q1 this year. Then we have Yes Your Grace Snowfall, a cinematic kingdom management game. I didn't play the first one, but I'm very interested in the second one. You play as the king and have to lead your kingdom and manage your kingdom's resources, make difficult decisions, manage the people under you, pass laws, set taxes, and each decision of course bear consequences. You also get to hire agents that will help you out with different things, aid in certain matters, but also stir trouble. They all have unique skill sets and their own personality, making everything a bit more complicated. Family is a very important factor in the game, and you watch your children grow up as you're trying to keep the kingdom together. I love the graphics here. They've done an excellent job with the aesthetics, and the second game looks a bit more polished than the first one and a bit more cinematic. Release of this one is also planned for Q1 this year. These are the games I think look the best releasing in March. Hopefully a few surprises will pop up along the way. But thank you so much for watching, have a great day, and I'll see you in the next one. Bye.